Hello, and welcome to the Why Am I Talking podcast. This channel is going to be about talking about movies and maybe other entertainment sources, possibly. I could do music, books, but mainly I'm going to stick to movies. It's sort of my passion. And I'm Jonah, and today I'm going to be talking about Midsommar, but before I get into the discussion, I kind of wanted to explain what my channel is going to be and how it's going to work. Basically, I'm not going to be like doing like a review or like giving like a rating to movies. I'm basically just going to be having a discussion about my thoughts on movies, and I feel like there's just so many people out there that give ratings and that give their opinions about movies, and honestly, I feel like film is such. I mean, there's objective things about film, obviously, and while a movie may be objectively bad, like there are people out there that enjoy that movie, and I don't want to be like the end all say all. My opinion is the the word of God. It's I'm just gonna talk about the movies, and obviously I'm gonna enjoy some more than others, and so I'll obviously my opinion will just come through in what I'm saying, but I'm not gonna give a definitive this movie was good, this movie was bad, because I mean, you look at an objectively bad movie like Sharknado is objectively bad, but I mean I know people who legitimately enjoy watching those, not even just for the meme, but because they think it's funny and kitsch, and I don't want to I don't want to bash on people like that, maybe I think a movie sucks, but and you can probably tell when I'm talking about it if I think something sucks or not. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to do that and essentially just have the discussion, like I was saying, about aspects I found interesting or things I enjoyed a lot. I'm not going to just bash on a movie. But anyway, I'm going to do new movies, so movies that are coming out in theaters. And I'm going to try and do those as quickly as I can from the day they're released. But I'm also going to do a lot of old movies. I'm actually sort of on a film conquest right now. Sort of. I have a long to watch list. I noticed growing up, my parents had me watch a lot of like blockbusters, like Transformers and stuff. But I missed out on a lot of classics in film history. So I'm going to be watching a lot of those, and then making episodes about them, and I'm sure if you've seen one before, I don't know how interested you would be to even check out what I have to say, but I'm going to do it anyway, just because I can. And I'll be doing recent movies that just recently came out. Maybe I missed them when they came in theaters, or somebody recommends it to me and I hadn't been planning on watching it. But mostly I'm just going to be doing movies that come out in theaters and classics or movies I find interesting. I'll eventually. There's a lot of foreign language films I plan on diving into. So yeah, not a whole lot in way of certain genres I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be kind of exploring all options. I'm not biased towards one thing or another. Anyway, yeah. Thank you for listening. I'm just getting started out. If you enjoy this podcast, feel free to subscribe. I'm just doing this for fun, honestly, but if you like it, that's great. So anyway, Midsommar. Let's get into Midsommar. So Midsommar, I went and saw it last night, late at night, which was fitting but not fitting at the same time, since almost the entire movie takes place in the daytime. Seemingly at this place that they end up at, this Midsummer Festival, there apparently is no nighttime, hardly at all. So, but that's not super important, just kind of off-putting, I suppose. Anyway, synopsis of Midsommar, if you don't know, essentially, this girl, I don't want to give anything away, but essentially, this group of young adults goes to a Midsummer Festival in Sweden, and it's completely messed up, and things go horribly wrong. It's pretty creepy, honestly. So I'm gonna do this in two sections. So I'm gonna do a non-spoiler section where I'm gonna discuss my thoughts without going into specifics about plot and characters and stuff, and then I'm going to do the second half, and I'll warn you that I'm going into the spoiler section where I'm going to talk about things that happened and my thoughts on that, and that I really want to discuss. But so starting off with non-spoiler, Midsommar is labeled as a horror film by the director, who is Ari Aster, who did Hereditary, which was a really creepy movie that came out last year last year. Yeah, I think it came out last year. Hereditary was his first movie, and it was a pretty great debut for a new director, specifically in horror. I feel like him and Jordan Peele both kind of broke out on the scene near the same time, and it was pretty cool to see two horror directors kind of step in and have this altruistic take on horror. But this Midsommar it's definitely different than Hereditary. If you liked Hereditary, do not go in expecting the same thing. It has sort of the same overall you can tell it's Ari Aster directing it. He really goes for a lot of that imagery that you get in Hereditary. This disturbing imagery that it carries over into Midsommar is definitely something that I noticed. But it's labeled as horror. I would more likely put it under thriller and gross. It's a gross movie. I don't really know how else to describe it. That's not a slight at the movie. That's the point, is that there's supposed to be some disturbing things that happen in the movie, and that does that very, very well. I would say, honestly, at times it almost plays like an examination of culture in this like eerie exploration into this obscure religion that these people follow. It also deals with, like in Hereditary, it deals with tragedy within families and the complications of relationships, and it just does it very, very differently than Hereditary did. And honestly, what I noticed about the movie in terms of relation to horror was that it wasn't so much outright scary. Like, there were no moments. I guess there were a few moments that were outright like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. But the real horror of this movie, the thing that makes it so brilliant, is how uneasy you feel. I mean, really, from the opening frame, you're just kind of uncomfortable. And he the way Ari Aster does that is by really misaligning what you're seeing on screen and what you're hearing and what the characters are doing versus like the actual content of their actions. Like, for instance, in this cult, there's this weird like I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there's this weird like breathing thing they do. I don't even really know how to explain it, where they go like and first, like, that sounds so dumb. Like, it just sounds like this normal like heavy breathing, but it's like really creepy when they do it. Like, he takes simple actions that perhaps culturally, if you saw someone doing it, it wouldn't be weird. But then, like, for this cult, like I don't even know how to explain cult is maybe the word. Cult, to be doing this weird movement, and that has to do with the acting, the mise en scène when they're doing it, because oftentimes their normal actions will take place in an area that's seemingly serene, but then you hear this music in the background that's like this, the typical one-string violin that's just sort of playing, and what you're seeing, you're like, well, that's a normal thing, but then you're unsettled by what you're hearing. Honestly, the imagery, like I said, the imagery was probably the strongest part of the movie, in my opinion. There's lots of subtle symbolism that I missed quite a bit of it, I gotta be honest, because they would show like pictures and stuff, and they would just flash off the screen, and if I went and rewatched it, I'm sure I'd catch more things, but the first time around, I didn't get it. But there was a lot to do with nature, and the destruction of nature, it seemed like, was sort of a part of the film. But honestly, the imagery, part of the reason it was so good is that the cinematography was absolutely beautiful. But they played into the unsettling scenes extremely well, to the point where things like cinematic shots that in another movie I would have been like, oh, that's beautiful, that's like a great shot. In my head, I was having a hard time thinking that, because I was like, oh my god, like what was on the screen was just so gross and like grotesque that I just couldn't I could not like handle what I was seeing. So it was upon reflection that I was like, wow, the cinematography was really good. During the movie, I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just sort of engrossed in this world that Ari Aster had built. Let's see what else. Don't expect any jump scares. Don't expect to be like, typical, Friday the 13th, Jason jumping out of the closet. It's not that kind of scary. I guess there's like maybe once that I would kind of consider to be a jump scare, but more than anything, it was just sort of an all around creepy vibe, and it was just a vibe, dude. But it was not outright scary, like I said earlier. But I guess what it lacks in jump scares, which I'm not a huge fan of jump scares for the most part, but what it didn't have for jump scares, it made up for in randomly throwing up images that would just make your stomach churn, which I guess in and of itself is sort of a jump scare, where you're like, oh, I didn't want to see that. Oh God, please take it off, get it away. Yeah, there's some really, if you don't have steel to nerves, or if you hate seeing stuff that like is just really disturbing, definitely don't go see this movie. Also, if you're sensitive to subjects of like suicide or I guess like incest or anything, just stay away from the movie then. Just a warning. If you've made it this far and you were like, well, it seems interesting, and then, I don't want you to go and I didn't warn you. Overall, the acting was pretty fantastic, I thought. Florence Pugh, she was in Fighting with My Family, which is a wrestling movie. It's one of the few wrestling movies I've ever seen, and I actually enjoyed it. I'm not a huge fan of like WWE or anything, but that movie, that's a whole different conversation to have. But anyway, she did fantastic, I thought, because she goes through some pretty deep emotions, I'd say, in the movie, and she handles it really well. I mean, I truly believed a lot of the tragedy that she was going through at times. She did a good job of not holding back the emotions that her character would have been having. And apart from that, she just did a good job at, being scared. I liked the rest of the cast, too. I mean, I like Will Poulter a lot. He's in the movie. Will Poulter's character is kind of a dick. He's also comedic relief for a while, and I like Will Poulter, so maybe I'm biased. I really liked him in The Revenant, and I'm not a big fan of the movie with who is it? It's got like Jennifer Aniston. We're the Millers. I'm not a huge fan of that movie, but I liked Will Poulter in it. And I also liked Will Poulter in that Black Mirror Bandersnatch. Yeah. The interactive one where you can whatever. I'm getting off track, but anyway, he did a good job. The whole cast did a good job. Those are the only two names I knew off the top of my head from the cast. They did a good job. I mean, they're really stock characters for the most part, but I enjoyed the cast, which is something I can't say for most horror movies. Honestly, most of the time I think they're idiots, or I just don't like them and I don't care about them. But I genuinely enjoyed these characters, and I guess maybe they don't always make the smartest decisions, and I don't know how. And I mean, if it was me and I had been like in their positions from the beginning of the movie, or not really the beginning of the movie, but once they arrive at this Midsommar festival, I would have been out of there. There's no way I'd have stayed. Like, I don't know. That's just me. Who knows? Yeah. Anyway, it's It's a good movie. Good movie. Good movie for. I said I wasn't gonna say if it was a good or a bad movie, and I just did it. I'm a doofus. I enjoyed the movie. That's what I'm getting at. Um, it's excellent from a technical standpoint, meaning cinematography, the way they played with lighting, and just the overall construction of the movie, I'd suppose. The pacing for me was maybe a little slow at times for a horror movie. Like at times, I found myself not being like drawn into the eeriness of it all. It was more I was just sort of watching it was more at times it felt like almost documentary-esque where I was just learning about this culture, which was interesting, but it wasn't so much about the horror at those times. If you liked Hereditary, I can't promise you that you're gonna like this. I can't promise anyone that they're gonna like this because it is very unique and very different than what you're probably used to in terms of horror and just movies in general. I'd say if you're gonna go see it, be prepared for some really unsettling things to happen, and be prepared to catch a lot of subtle imagery and a lot of just you're gonna be uneasy, I guess, is the point. If you're gonna go see this, you're gonna be uneasy, but it is a unique film in Hollywood, which is, by today's standards, very rare, to say the least. And probably a lot of you are thinking that you're just gonna go see Spider-Man instead after all the things I just said. But now I would like to move into my spoiler section so I can get into specifics. Now would be the time, if you're planning on going to see it after everything I said, to hop on off. Unless you want to hear, that way you're even more prepared. So anyway, here we go into spoilers. So first off, I want to talk about the beginning of film. If you've already seen it, then you will know that towards the beginning, Danny, who is the main character, her sister, kills herself and her parents in a horrible tragedy for Danny. She kills them by funnels or tubes the carbon monoxide from their cars in the garage into the house and then closes the door so that they all die in their sleep. And she tapes the hose to her mouth so that she can't take it off, and before it happens, she emails Danny and says something along the lines of I can't do this anymore, it's too dark, I'm taking mom and dad with me, goodbye. And Danny's freaking out, and then she finds out that she did actually kill herself because her sister is diagnosed with bipolar, so she thought maybe she was just having an episode, and then she's dead. And it's pretty hard to watch, honestly. Specifically the scene where it's like a tracking shot that follows these firefighters, and you just see this red flashing light, and you can't really tell what it is, and then you see the cars and all the smoke from the carbon monoxide, and you aren't really sure what's going on, and then you see the tubes going inside, and you see the parents with their eyes closed, and then you start to realize, and it's really it's a really well done scene, I would say. Ari Aster did a great job of taking us through the house and starting the scene where we weren't sure what was going on, and then as it's uncovered, it's a pretty slow burn shock, but it's an effective one, and I was honestly kind of blown away by the scene in a bad and good way, because bad, obviously, I was kind of disturbed, and that scene stuck with me well after the credits had started rolling. But it was a really well done scene, and if you've seen the movie, you know that's the moment that things really kick off, because beforehand it's more kind of relationship drama between Danny and her boyfriend, who's not giving her the attention, and he wants to break up with her or whatever, and then bam, dead parents, and says Batman. Dead parents, says Batman. That was a terrible joke, I'm sorry. But also, going back into that relationship, I thought there was pretty good chemistry there between Florence Pugh and frick, I can't remember his name, but they did a good job at showing that turmoil in their relationship. I really didn't like his character all that much. He was kind of a douchebag, but I bought it. I bought that they had been together for 4.5 years and that they were going through this struggle. I know that's like a simple thing, but I appreciate when there's good acting and I can buy a relationship, because sometimes it's not always super well done on screen, particularly in like a horror movie. But I enjoyed their back and forth, and you could tell that there was tension between them for a lot of the movie, simply because he wasn't giving her quite the attention she deserved, and she was trying so hard to, let him spread his wings and fly, to be metaphorical with it, but he was sort of being standoffish to her, if you remember. I also, apart from interactions with the actors, I thought that the cult as a whole did a fantastic job at playing on that horror trope of this sort of blank-faced cult member that's just sort of maniacal, because all of them were like that. And it was just it was so creepy. I can't really put my finger on exactly what it was about those shots when they'd be standing at the tables, and then it would be like everyone standing completely still, and one person sits down and they all start sitting down. I don't know what it was about the way they filmed that and the way the cast played on it, but it was honestly just kind of off-putting and it's one of those things that you just really can't put into words, because you have to see it to see how creepy it is, and to see how creepy their rituals are and their traditions, because all of it was just like messed up in a good way. Like, they would take, like I was saying earlier in this episode, they took such normal like activities and they somehow just made them creepy. Every person in the cult was creepy in what they did. And honestly, that cult, when I saw the trailers, I kind of thought that the cult cliche has sort of been overdone. And so I was curious, because Ari Aster, he's, Hereditary, he was pretty unique in his, the direction that he took that. And so I was interested to see where he was going to take this cult imagining. And honestly, I talked to a friend about this. The scene in Get Out when the main character goes upstairs and then everyone stops talking. They're like having like a party, and they all stop talking at the same exact moment once he goes out of sight, and they turn and look at him, and you're just so like uncomfortable and kind of like freaked out because they just stopped at the same exact time and looked at him. That's what this whole movie feels like. Is that whole moment in Get Out, that one moment in Get Out, feels like the entire movie, that you're just so unsettled by what these people are doing. And that takes some skill to be able to convincingly portray that many people as being pretty goddamn creepy. Man. Let's talk about those deaths too, the suicides. Apparently that's a real thing that I think the Vikings used to do, the Circle of Life or whatever, where it's like till you're 16 or 18, you're like a child, and then you become a man, and then you go on like a voyage when you're like 32. I don't remember I could be completely wrong. I don't want to assume in case there's someone who like actually comes from this heritage, but essentially that's like a real thing where people would like kill themselves when they turn 72. Because they were like willingly giving up their life. Didn't make the scene any less disturbing, even having that knowledge, because it's pretty grotesque when they hit the ground. I mean, specifically, I can't say that either the man or the woman was grosser, because the woman's face was just so blah when you saw it. And I mean, the people sitting around me definitely had the same reaction as Danny in the movie. They just covered their eyes as soon as she basically belly flopped off the cliff. And but the guy, his leg, dude, so gross. It was so gross. He just, I mean, I did not need to see that. I could have gone my whole life, and I think I would have been happy not seeing that. But that's the effect the movie had on me. I it's a creepy image, really, really gross. Creepy is not the word. Gross is the word that I'm looking for. Honestly, I don't know if there's any basketball fans, but in the NCAA tournament like 4 or 5 years ago, this guy broke his leg and his like calf bone was sticking out of his leg. That's where my mind went to, except for this is like 100 times worse. And I remember I like almost threw up when I saw it in the basketball game, so my stomach was churning when I saw it here in the movie. That was honestly one of the best moments in the movie, because that's honestly when it really goes, because it goes 0 to 100 when when Danny's family kills themselves, and then it gets kind of slow again when they're going to the Midsommar festival. I mean, they go on like a mushroom trip for a little bit, and that's kind of weird because there's some weird stuff that happens where like the grass is like growing through her foot in her if you remember that. To me, that I don't know what it was about that image that kind of grossed me out, but it did. Anyway, on the deaths, I would say if you're gonna take people to see this, like if you're like really big into this movie and you're gonna tell people to see it again, make sure you like warn them, like I was saying earlier, because there were some people in the theater I was with that were pretty susceptible, and they actually had to get up and walk out for a few minutes. And if I had known, like I would have told them, like, be prepared for that. So anyway, it's a rough movie. I mean, I feel like the trailer, you would never guess that you're gonna see that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, another image. Sorry, I just got completely sidetracked, but really cool image. Also very, very gross. When I think his name was Charlie. Charlie. I think it was the boyfriend of the. It's the boyfriend that like disappeared because she said, and his girlfriend was like, "Oh, he's getting the truck, so we're leaving. We're gonna go in the train," and then he disappeared, and then. Once Christian was done basically having an orgy with like 8 different women, he walked in and the guy was like hanging from the ceiling and his back was cut open so you could see his spine and his lungs had been pulled out behind him and he was still breathing. I don't know how that dude was alive, but he was still breathing. That was so gross. Oh my god. I just could not believe what I was seeing. It was just so grotesque. But apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently that's like an actual like punishment that I think this all comes from like Viking culture. But that was like an actual thing that people did. And he like, I guess the imagery that I got from it was that he was supposed to look like a butterfly or like a bird or something. And then the way they sewed the flowers onto his eyes, that was just, oh my god. That was just a bit much. But it was still cool, I guess. Cool is the word I would label it if I wasn't gonna label it gross. Because it's just so I never would have expected to see something like that. And at that point in the movie, you're kind of ready for anything. Another strange part that. In the movie it was dead quiet, or in the movie theater I was in, it was kind of dead quiet when it was happening, but I couldn't help but laugh a little bit, was when Christian was having that, essentially, I don't know if I should call it an orgy, since it was really just, it was an orgy, let's go with orgy. I couldn't help but laugh when they all started, like, moaning in synchronization, and then the lady came behind him and was like pushing his butt cheeks. I don't know why I thought that was so funny, but I'm glad I thought it was funny, because otherwise I probably would have been really, really, really uncomfortable. I just really want to discuss that scene because again, that's another thing that I could have gone my entire life. I could have died at a ripe old age and looked back on my life, and I don't think that I would have regretted not seeing that. I mean, as soon as I saw a bunch of naked old ladies like singing in harmony, I was like, "Uh-oh, what am I about to watch?" And I was right. I was right. It was disturbing. Um, Apart from the gross images, I think that they played a lot on the what's the word I'm looking for? Symbolism's not the word. Let's just say imagery, like I've been saying this whole time. Um, I think that the flowers and like nature, they were so, it's nature is inherently seen as like a force of good or evil, depending on the um, movie that you're watching or the literature that you're reading. Um, but in this movie, I almost couldn't define what nature represented because one thing that actually, I don't know if it was supposed to make me uncomfortable, but it did, is when it's right after Danny is named the May Queen, and she's sitting at the head of the table. All the flowers, like, they looked like mouths almost. They were like opening and closing, and for some reason, it just made me feel so weird. I think there's like an actual word for like the feeling that kind of stuff can give you. I don't know what it is, but it did, and I was super uncomfortable during that part. Um, I think that if I was gonna go for a representation of those flowers, I guess it has to do with maybe it has to do with when they sewed the flowers on that guy's eyes. Maybe it has to do something with like nature's watching, like Mother Nature. I don't know, man. That's just talking out of my ass. Maybe that's what it has to do with it, or maybe it's just about these freaking weirdos' relationship with nature. Regardless, pretty cool imagery there. Also, cinematography. Cool shot that I noticed, and this is the way I interpreted it, was when they were driving to the festival, and they were on the road, and then the camera kind of flipped upside down, and it looked like the car was like driving like on like the car was like on the top of the frame, so it looked like they could fall off the earth. I think that was the way I interpreted it was that they were literally like falling off the map is like the image they were going for. Not entirely sure if that's correct. That's the way I interpreted it. Also, don't mind all my sniffling and stuff because I'm just randomly getting a bloody nose, so I keep reaching for tissues and I'm kind of getting distracted. I don't know what's happening, but it is happening. Can't really control it. um, let's see, what other technical elements I wanted to discuss. The high key lighting that they use pretty much throughout the whole movie. They use natural light from the sun. For some reason, I usually don't like it when when horror movies are super dark and they just kind of play on humans' natural fear of the dark. I feel like that's pretty overplayed. But I haven't been a big fan of movies where they try to beat the trope too much, so they stick with only high key lighting. We're gonna make this movie as bright as possible and still try and scare you. What's an example of that I was thinking of? Shoot. I can't think right now. But point is, usually I like a good mixture And I think there's a couple dark scenes, and maybe like one or two, like actually dark lit scenes in the movie. And for the most part, it was high key lighting. But they did such a good job of playing with, again, like I was saying, they did such a good job of playing with the sound, the score, and the cinematography that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed having it be bright the whole time because it just added to that off-putting setting and the off-putting tone that they had, the uneasiness, because you knew that it should have been this serene place. You know, like when you first walk in, there's the sun that they walk through. Literally, it's like this giant metal sun thing they walk through. And it's this beautiful, gorgeous place. But there is just something wrong, and you don't know what the hell it is. It's a pretty disturbing atmosphere, I'd say, with the lighting being so bright, but the subject matter being so dark. And apart from the technical elements and those few key scenes, I'd say there's not a whole lot in way of spoilers that isn't maybe non-pertinent, because it's just sort of what you'd expect from a horror movie. So, the ending, though. I did want to talk about the ending. First off, Danny's outfit at the end of just straight up flowers and in a dress. For some reason, I also thought that was kind of funny. I don't know what it was. It just looked ridiculous. I don't know if anybody agrees with me on that, but I thought it was pretty funny looking. Also, I don't know much about bears in culture or whatever, but I feel like there's gotta be some sort of reason that they put him in a bear. Like, that's gotta be on purpose, not some random animal that Ari Aster decided on. If anybody knows, if you're watching this and you have an idea and you've seen the movie, feel free to let me know, because I have no idea what the symbolism was supposed to be there. But I am going to give my interpretation of the ending, because I think that I kind of had a disagreement with a friend on what we thought the ending meant and exactly what happened there at the end. So my interpretation of what happened there at the end, with Danny burning everyone alive and smiling there at the last frame, is that I think it has to go back with her discussion with Pele, the Swedish guy, when he was saying, I lost my family, these people accepted me, blah, 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 they're a family, they took care of me. And she lost her family, so I think that at the end was her, they made her the May Queen. They made her so important. She felt loved and accepted, and since her real family was dead, it was like, oh, these people are accepting me, even if they are fucking psychopaths. And so, I think that, she had kind of lost her mind too at that point. I mean, she had so much trauma in her life at that point. She had seen so many things. I mean, and then there at the end, she saw Christian cheating on her. And I think that was really what pushed her over the edge, is that he was the only person left in her life. There were, 4.5 years. I mean, you're thinking about marriage and stuff, and for him to cheat on her, she just lost the last shred of humanity left in her, I think, just kind of disappeared there at the end. And since these people were accepting her, she, of course, just turned to them and maybe found beauty in this culture they had built. And so that frame there at the end, I think she was sad because they were dead, and then she was kind of joining in, honestly, with the crazy screaming that the cult was doing to, I guess, share in the pain of those who were passing over. Which also, by the way, that whole crying together, orgasming together, all that weird stuff, man, that was super super unique to the cult, the cult cliche that I found really interesting. But anyway, there at the end, that little smile she gave, I was that's what I got out of it. I was like, oh, she's definitely kind of lost her mind, and she's or maybe she's not lost her mind. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I've never been through that kind of trauma, but she's found acceptance here, and I think that has a lot to do with Pele, who was the guy who was basically infatuated with her the whole movie, or maybe he was just trying to draw her into the cult. Who knows? I had a friend who disagreed with me and was like, "Nah, she just snapped. She went insane, and she's." But I think that maybe she found like acceptance, and that's what that frame was that she was, since she was joining in this ritual with them, that she found like a serenity there. It's up to interpretation, but that's what I get out of it. You can disagree if you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, well, too bad. Now you're going to go in with my opinion, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to talk about? I don't think so. I think I've hit all the major points that I wanted to hit or discuss. Again, I'm not going to give a rating, or I guess I already did say it was a good movie, but I did not intend to, because that's up to interpretation. Somebody else can watch this and be like, that was absolute garbage. And I mean, even the people I saw it with were like, that wasn't that good. But that's, I'm happy to just see a unique movie in Hollywood, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that agree with me. I'm sure there are plenty that disagree, because it's subjective. It's film. It's an art form. And this is definitely not a movie for everyone. That, like, 100% not for everyone. It's you have to be a certain type of person to like really, really enjoy this. I'm probably never gonna watch it again, just because I don't know if I want to see some of those things again. But I did enjoy. It was a refreshing. Unique perspective. Ari Aster's definitely got a unique perspective, if you're going to say anything about him. And he's very good at directing. Directing uneasy, tragic movies that, if he continues to do horror, good for him. I think that he could also easily make like a family drama that makes us cry our eyes out, because he could probably make it more awful than we could imagine. That's just my opinion, but I doubt Ari Aster's going anywhere from horror anytime soon, because he seems to love it a lot. If you watch the movie, you can definitely tell it's definitely an Aster baby, if I'm gonna put it anyway. Yeah, I think that's I've definitely hit everything. I'm going through my notes like 4 or 5 times, so sorry. Anyway, if you enjoyed listening to me rant about Midsommar, I'm going to be making another episode here in the next probably day or two. I'm going to be doing episodes quite a few times a week, probably, because I watch multiple movies a week, and I'd like to talk about all of them. This is more for me to just talk than for anything else, because I watch a lot of movies, and I have a lot of thoughts about them, but I don't have anybody to share those thoughts with. So, this is a place for me to vent my thoughts and feelings, So, anyway, again, like I said, if you like this, subscribe, maybe give it a like and comment. I don't know what all you want to do. I just see other YouTubers just like saying shit like this all the time. Also, if there's any movies you want me to watch, feel free to let me know. My next movie is probably going to be Taxi Driver by Martin Scorsese, because I'm finishing up a film class right now, and this is one of the options for me to watch, and it's been on my to-watch list for like a year now, and I have it for free on my school website, so I'm going to go ahead and watch it, and I'll be making another episode here soon. Thank you for listening if you got this far, and if you left the video earlier, screw you. Just kidding. I get it. This is my first podcast. It's kind of talking. Thanks for listening. I just said that. I don't know what I'm trying to do with the ending here, but regardless, that was Midsommar. I will see you guys in the next couple of days. Thank you. Goodbye.